Hello viewers, hello everyone, welcome back to Jowins Fashion Ville. So today we'll be doing a wrap crop top illustration. If you haven't subscribed, please do not forget to do so, and then hit on the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video, okay? So guys, let's get started. So firstly, I'll go ahead to draft the pattern for this illustration. So that is the shoulder line. From the shoulder line, I'll simply go ahead to determine the waistline, which is 17 inches, and then the full measurement of our crop top is 19 inches. So on the waistline, I went ahead to draw a horizontal line, and then on the full length, I also went ahead to draw a horizontal line, and I indicated it as FL. So to establish our neckline, I simply went out by 4 inches on the shoulder line, and then I came down by 1 inch. Okay, so basically I'll be drafting the front and the back pattern on this particular pattern paper, and we'll get to see the reasons for this. And then I connected the 2 points together. Okay, then to establish our shoulder measurement, which is our shoulder measurement divided by 2, since we have our pattern on fold, I went ahead to place that mark there, and then from that point I came down by 1 inch to establish the shoulder slant. Okay, then I connected the 2 points together. From that point, I went ahead to determine the armhole, which is our armhole circumference divided by 2. So it varies for different persons with different body sizes, so you know what your armhole is. So go ahead and take your armhole circumference and then divide it by 2. So I simply went ahead to confirm that measurement so that we'll have our armhole correctly. And then I connected the 2 points together as seen here. So please have it at the back of your mind that the armhole establishes the chest line, okay? So I went ahead to draw the chest line, and then I labeled it as CH, okay? So to establish our armhole curve, what I'll simply do is to get the midpoint of the arm side, okay, which is still the armhole, okay? So the midpoint of that point is 4.25, okay? Since the full length of the armhole is 8.5, so 8.5 divided by 2 is 4.25. Okay, so from that point, I simply went in by 0.5 inch. Okay, and then on the chest line, I simply went ahead to place a quarter of our bust circumference of the bust on the chest line. So for me, I'll be marking 9.5 there. So you go ahead and get the quarter of your bust circumference and then place it on your chest line if you're drafting with me. And then I simply connected the 3 points together. So I labeled this curve as the front armhole curve, okay? And then for the back curve, I simply went ahead to to draw a curve from the midpoint of the armhole to the point on our chest line. And then I labeled it as the back armhole curve. I hope you understand me. Then to determine our horizontal measurements on the waistline, I went ahead to mark the quarter of my waist circumference on the waistline, and then I simply connected it to the chest line as shown here. So on the full length of the crop top, I simply placed our waist measurement, which is quarter of our waist circumference, on the full length, and then I connected it to the waistline. So the next thing to do is to place our seam allowance. So on the chest line, I simply went ahead to mark half an inch ease allowance first, and then plus 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I did the same for the waistline, which is half an inch ease allowance plus 1 inch seam allowance. So I also applied it on the full length as well, half an inch ease allowance and then 1 inch seam allowance, and then I connected the 3 points together. So we have completed the pattern for the back. For the front pattern, I simply went ahead to place this pattern paper on a spread. So I opened it up, and then I drew a vertical line on the center front of our basic bodice. Okay. So I'm drawing a vertical line here. Then I went ahead to establish the neckline for the front pattern. So from the shoulder line, I'll be coming down by inch. This is not a standard. You can decide to place any neckline of your choice. You can decide to take it up by 3 inches or by 4 inches or even below 6 inches, okay? So I connected it to the shoulder line with my pattern cord. So I simply went ahead to extend the waistline to the other part of the pattern paper. So that's exactly what I'm doing. Then the full length as well, I extended the line to the other side. Okay, so we'll get to see the reason for this. So on the waistline, I simply went out by 6.5 inches. So I used my measuring tape to mark 6.5 inches on the waistline. Okay, and then from that point, I simply went up by 1 inch. Okay, and then I connected the 3 points together, which is the waistline, the full line, the full length line, and then the 1 inch mark. Okay. So what I simply did next was to connect that point to the front neckline, okay? So we can now go ahead to add a seam allowance to all the relevant places, which is the front slants here, and then the neckline, the shoulder slants, the armhole, excluding the side front because we have added the seam allowance there previously. Okay, so this is the seam allowance indicated with the red marker pen. So having done this, we can now go ahead to place our pattern on fold. Firstly, we'll go ahead to cut out the pattern for the back on our pattern paper and then on our main fabric. So guys, so having done this, I simply detached the pattern from the fabric, placed it on spread, and then I went ahead to cut out the pattern for the front, okay? So I made a little adjustment here. So since we had the pattern for the armhole having the back and the front, so I simply went ahead to mark 0.5 inch precisely for the front armhole curve. So as you can see here, I'm precisely marking 0.5 inches seam allowance for the front line, front armhole. Then I'll go ahead to cut it out before cutting it on main fabric. So right on my working table, I have this piece of fabric for the sleeve. So I'll be doing a freehand sketch and then I'll basically drop my the link for a basic sleeve pattern in my description box. So for those who are yet to learn, can go ahead and check it out, okay? So what I basically did here was more like a balloon sleeve on the lower part. Okay, so we'll have appropriate sleeve pattern on the upper section, and then on the lower part we'll have a puffiness down there. So after creating the armhole curve here, I simply went ahead to draw a slant. Okay, so I went ahead to draw a slanty line instead of a straight line. Okay, so I'll be marking 14 inches on our fabric. You can go ahead to multiply your arm measurement by 2 or by 3 or by 1.5. So for me, I just simply used 14 inches and then I connected it to that point. So after cutting it out, I simply went ahead to notch the sleeve unfold. This is very important when joining your sleeve to your top, or to the crop top precisely. So for the belt, I simply went ahead to use my front pattern to determine the width of the belt. So right here, with my measuring tape, I have 3 inches. So I simply went ahead to cut out 5 inches belt. So it has a width of 5 inches simply because we'll be using 1 inch to cover the raw edges above, and then another 1 inch to cover the raw edges below. So I'll simply go ahead to cover the raw edge with a double fold as shown here. This is the facing for the front pattern, so I'll place it right sides facing each other. I'll run a stitch and then I'll turn it the other way. And then this is the facing for the back neckline. I'll simply place it right sides facing each other. I'll run a stitch and then turn it the other way and then give it a good press. So this is the front pattern. I've attached it and then I've given it a good press, as you can see. And then this is the facing for the back. So I also did the same. I gave it a good press so that it can relax properly. Okay. Then I simply went ahead to attach the belt. Okay, so I'll simply place this belt right sides facing each other here, and then I'll run a stitch by that side by half an inch. So I'll be using half an inch seam allowance to attach the belt. So this is it. I've attached it, but before doing this I went ahead to cover the hem first with a double fold. You can see before attaching the belt I simply cover the raw edges. Okay, so the next thing to do is to attach our shoulders, or is to join the shoulders of the front pattern to the shoulder of the back pattern. So what we'll simply do here is to place them right sides facing each other, secure it with a pin, and then take it over to a sewing machine and then run your stitch. Okay, so right here I'm trying to determine my arm circumference for the elastic band. So it's measuring 11 inches, so I'll simply go ahead to cut 11 inches on the band plus half an inch seam allowance I'll be using to gather the lower part of the sleeve. Okay, so after cutting it out, I went ahead to attach the sleeve first to our crop top. So this is where the notched points come into play. I simply went ahead to match it on the shoulder line, and then I secured it with a pin. So it's very important to secure your joinings first with a pin. before running your stitch. So this is exactly what I'm doing to minimize error. So guys, you can see how relaxed the sleeve is. Okay, so I'll simply take this over to my sewing machine and then I'll run a stitch and then I'll close up the sides and then we'll get to see what our crop top looks like. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in my next video. Bye.